State Representative Alan Seabaugh is here. Mr. Allen, thank you for taking time for us, sir. Welcome back.
Always glad to come. I appreciate the invitation.
Okay, so we have election challenges. The Trump folks in, good heavens, all over the country. Pennsylvania, Michigan gets to be more of a mess with this Wayne County stuff. You've got Wisconsin, Arizona still sort of up in the air. Before we get into your specific constitutional interpretation, what do you think the next 10 days to 2 weeks holds for the Trump folks as these challenges start to work their way through the courts?
Well, you really have two sets of challenges. First, the stage we're in right now is the challenge before the certification. Challenging, which is what we went through in Florida in 2000. It was before the certification. How are we going to do the recounts? Which ballots are going to be counted? Are you going to throw any out before or after the count? That's where we are right now. The second set of challenges will be after the certification. If a state certifies, each state theoretically is going to certify some set of results. And every state has in their books a period to challenge the results thereafter. So you could have a second round once that certification is made.
But you've got constitutionally a number of dates, hard dates, deadlines that have to be met, right? What happens if particular states don't make those dates, or if, theoretically Pennsylvania, their quote-unquote certified results are still in the courts at that point?
And that's the question that we haven't ever dealt with. People keep talking about this case going to the House of Representatives, which, again, as a Trump supporter, that would be fine with me because Republicans would win that because we control more state delegations than the Democrats do. But I don't think that's where we're going. And I'm in the minority on this, but every election that has gone to the House of Representatives has gone there because there was more than two candidates and somebody didn't get a majority. Because the 12th Amendment requires a majority of the appointed electors. And when we've had contested elections in 1800, which is actually before the 12th Amendment was passed, and then which is why they passed the 12th Amendment, and then either 24 or 28 afterwards, because there were more than two candidates, and nobody could get to a majority. We only have two.
As you were here yesterday talking with Moon, and you tossed this idea out, we chatted a little bit as you were on your way out, which is why I wanted you back this morning. Your constitutional interpretation is a little different turn from most everybody, from anybody else that I've heard. Explain to me, Aaron, listeners, what you think lies ahead.
Okay. In Article 2 of the Constitution, which talks about election of the president, they say each state legislature gets to determine the manner in which the electors are appointed. And the terminology is important. They refer to appointed electors. Well, Article 12 says that it gives them the minutia of how to go about voting, but the winner of the presidency is going to be the one with a majority of the appointed electors. There remains the possibility that a state like Pennsylvania, for instance, the election is so messed up. They've not saved the envelopes that they were supposed to save, so they can't verify the validity of the mail-in ballots. They've commingled the ones that came in after Election Day with the ones that came in before in violation of state election law. The court will have two options. We'll have three options. It can certify the results. It can say, no, we're not going to let you count these ballots. You must have a recount without counting these particular ballots. Or it could say your election is so fraught with fraud that a determination cannot be made.
Okay, so
that's the scenario where I think no electors are appointed from that state.
Royal's theory was, and then I want you to get into where yours is different. Royal's thought was that if that happens, that the Supreme Court is going to say to Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, whoever else it happens to be, you guys have fouled this up so badly that we can't possibly do a legitimate recount. We're going to send it to the House of Representatives. But you see a different path, right?
Yeah, I don't think that's how it works because you can't, if they've fouled the election up, you can't send it to the House of Representatives because there are no electors from Pennsylvania at that point. And so, but the Constitution does not say you have to have 270. That is not in the Constitution. It does not say you have to have a majority of the possible electors. It says a majority of the electors appointed. And if the court rules that Pennsylvania's election was so messed up they did not appoint any electors, then the magic number falls from 270 to 260 because you dropped 20. So you need one more than half, so it would drop from 270 to 260. So I still think you're going to have the Electoral College is going to meet on, I think it's December 14th, and they're going to vote. And if there's only two candidates, somebody's going to have a majority. The only way it goes to the House of Representatives is nobody has a majority. Now, other people are reading the 12th Amendment as requiring 270. I don't think that's what it says. And the question then is going to become, does Pennsylvania get to, or Georgia, for instance, get to appoint electors, or are those just thrown out?
Do you really think a whole state's votes would be thrown out?
Because of the timeline, yes. Now, normally what happens in Louisiana, for instance, and we talked about this yesterday on Moon, I've been involved in some election challenges where they said there was so much fraud, something went wrong, we're going to throw the result out, and we're going to redo the election. That happens. But in a presidential contest, you don't have time to do that because there are hard deadlines. The Electoral College meets. There are hard deadlines in January. So you don't have time to redo the election. That's not an option. And if the results can't be deemed from the ballots that were cast on November 3rd, then I think the only option is to throw it out. And so the Supreme Court is not going to, quote, unquote, declare Trump the winner. That's not going to happen. That's not what happened in 2000. They didn't declare Bush the winner. What they ruled was that what Gore was asking them to do with the recounts was a violation of Florida law, and that they required them to follow Florida law on the books prior to the election.
So what would the Supreme Court rule in this case?
It would have to be based on Pennsylvania or Georgia law. Again, there is no federal election. There is no federal election mandate federal law. We have 51 state elections to determine how electors are appointed. And what happened in 2000 is Gore was asking Florida to do a recount that was contrary to the recount procedure in Florida law. So what would have to happen is what I anticipate is these cases in 5 or 6 states are going to go up to federal court. They're going to have to go through the state courts first, and then they would appeal from the state Supreme Court to the federal court, to the U.S. Supreme Court, and said the recount procedure is a violation of state law. There is no question that Pennsylvania's counting procedure is a violation of state law because they went to court before the election and they got approval to use a different procedure. But the U.S. Supreme Court declined to step in and say that's wrong. What they did say was you need to keep them separate. So you need to keep the ballots that come in after Election Day separate, and I don't think they've done that.
So to sum up,
and if they've commingled them, then you can't count them.
So to sum up, what Alan Seabaugh is saying is the Supreme Court will look at a variety of states where the challenges have taken place, Pennsylvania, Michigan, wherever it happens to be. And they will say to those states, you have so disobeyed your own election laws. You have so violated your own rules. You have so mucked up the whole procedure. We're just eliminating your electors from the Electoral College total, which would make, instead of needing 270, the necessary majority drops to whatever number it happens to be. Have I got that right?
That's correct. Now, that's a way for the Supreme Court to rule in Trump's favor on the fraud allegations, but Biden still actually wins the election under the scenario that I'm putting out there, because under every scenario that I look at, Biden is going to have more votes than Trump. If you throw out Pennsylvania, if you throw out Georgia, he's still ahead of Trump. Trump needs all of those states in order to win. The only way for it to happen would be to throw out Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. And then maybe Trump's head. So I think this is a way for the Supreme Court to actually rule in Trump's favor on the fraud allegations, but Biden still becomes president.
From what you know, from the folks you've talked to, as you look at the stories, which are very complicated, when you look at these individual states, Pennsylvania specifically, they've really messed things up, haven't they?
Yes, Pennsylvania has really messed things up. Pennsylvania is the most in question, in my opinion. Trump campaign team has very, very good cases in Georgia and Wisconsin. I don't know so much about Arizona, and Michigan, the disparity is pretty big. I think there's some clear allegations of fraud in Michigan. I don't know if they're enough to tip the balance, but I would say Pennsylvania, I'll be shocked if there isn't some action with respect to Pennsylvania. Now, again, they could say you just can't count if you commingled the mail-in ballots that came in after November 3rd with the ones that came in before November 3rd, then they can't properly be counted. So you throw all the mail-in ballots out and just count the election day votes. I don't think they'll do that. I really don't. But that would give the state to Trump. But I don't honestly. I don't see them doing that. I think they're more likely to say you literally can't figure out who got the most legitimate votes because you've messed the process up so much. So you can't certify the election, so we don't know who won.